Every day, your values influence the choices and the decisions that you make. In this video with John, we're going to talk about how his values have influenced the critical choices he has made. Hey, Helen Horiza here, ready to give you information and techniques that will help you make a career choice or a career change. On this channel, you'll learn about the Elevate Career Cycle, the Elevations Career Assessment, and a range of tools to help you make great choices. If you're new here, subscribe. Now let's dive into the video. John, welcome.
Nice to be here, Helen.
I'm
Thanks for having me.
so delighted that you can join us and talk a little bit about the relationship between values and choices. And again, something that maybe lives in the background of your thought process, maybe not front and center. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about them being front and center in your decision making.
Sure.
So I started out by asking you to take the Elevations Career Assessment and look at your values. So what did you discover? What values popped up for you as most important?
Well, I think taking the assessment really helped clarify. You talked about being in the background and what was brought up in front. That really brought it up front for me. Authenticity was a big value that I operate under, and it was nice to have that clarified. Social connection was another one, and then realizing autonomy is important to me. So I think those are probably the top three that came to mind that were on the report.
So tell me a little bit about authenticity and how authenticity might influence a decision that you would make.
Well, I think authenticity is really about true human connection. So to me, authenticity, there's nothing fake about it. It's genuine. It's connective. So that's one where it's pretty easy to me when I've realized I'm not in a very connected place with whoever I might be talking with or whatever path I might be going down. So it's kind of a touchstone, I would say, for me, authenticity.
Right. And it was social connection. And what was the third one?
Autonomy.
Autonomy. All right. So independence, freedom, flexibility, interaction with people. All right. So that's a beautiful segue to tell us a little bit about what you do, how you help people in the work that you do.
I own an insurance brokerage, and really we help take financial risk out of people's lives. And getting to that authenticity and the connection, with risk there is fear. So it's nice to be able to take something that's usually complex for people or they're not interested in, but they realize there's a fear there because there's a risk there. And to be able to take that out of their life and they can move on to things that they really want to focus on. So we kind of just help them get risk moved off to the side, and with it goes fear.
Nice. And that makes you feel then that most of your work, I'm going to put words in your mouth, but most of your work is really about how you build those relationships and how you let people know that they can trust you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to let you deal with their fears or with their risks without them trusting you.
Yeah.
So I think there has to be connection there.
And so pulling back in the big picture, when you think about some of the most major events of your life, both professionally and personally, and the big decisions you've had to make, can you see an intersection between your values and some of the biggest decisions you've had to make?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, autonomy for one. I bought the business with a couple of partners about 18 years ago. So that was certainly about autonomy and wanting to control our own destiny and pave our own way. So that was obviously an easy one. I remember before that time, I was at a crossroads thinking, well, I had a 2-year-old daughter. And I thought, well, if I'm going to make a move, I better make it now. So I started exploring. And that process actually helped me because as I was looking at other industries, I started to appreciate my industry more and realized I just wasn't in the right place within that industry. So that all played to work-life balance, which is one of mine. And it appealed to learning and complexity, which is also part of going into new areas in my field. So I basically made a career change within my field.
Right. But what's interesting about that is that, and thinking about the fact that maybe somebody's watching us and they're really new, they don't know what a career is going to be like. And then some people who are, more like us, we've had a lot of exposure. And when you think about, step back and we look at the choices that we've made, we really do make them for our values almost more than any other reason.
I would agree with that. Whether we're conscious of those values or not, whether it's in the background or whether it's up front.
Right. And that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation with you, is because I think that if people actually stepped back for just a minute and took an assessment of their values and then looked at the choices they were going to make, they'd have even more self confidence about the movement that they're going to go with.
Absolutely. When I think about that journey I went on it basically blind. I didn't have the assessment then.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to have had it.
Right.
Because I would have just been. Fortunately, it worked out for me, but it would have been nice to embark on that journey with my values up front and clear and things that resonate, and it would have been a much easier path.
So we've known each other for about 10 years. And uh, so there have been times in your business when it was rough, when things weren't going really well. And how do you think your values might have influenced the choices you make when things are going rough?
Well, I think when things are really tough, when the rubber is meeting the road, I think that's where a person's real character comes out,
Mm-hmm.
both in yourself and in your partners. And I mean, I think when you're in that kind of crunch time, it's all about values then, because I think that's the only way that you're either going to get your way through it or see your way out or overcome it. I don't think you can be fake going into that kind of challenge.
Good point. It makes me think about the values that are sort of like the super values of respect, integrity, treating other people with dignity,
Yes.
being willing to be compassionate when you're disagreeing. Those big ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And generosity, where you might have to take one for the team because the team needs one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And selfishness will come out
Yeah.
if a person is selfish, and selflessness will come out if they're selfless.
What advice in the area of decision making, choices, and values would you give our viewers?
Well, I would say, first of all, when I took the assessment, it really resonated with me, and it helped bring it up into the frontal lobe, so to speak. So I would say I would use that as my North Star, and I would start with that and let that help chart. It's a lot easier to do it that way than to stumble around the dark and luckily find out at the end you got there, but it would have been a lot easier trip.
So one of my videos talks about how a career assessment is a validation process, and you're really pointing that out. Like, we know ourselves, and then we might take an assessment, it says the same thing, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you share that with me, and it all matches, and it just gives you a sense of inner core strength. And I don't know, it adds to the whole package of feeling like your life and your career is headed in the right direction.
Yeah. Or I think it brings out things that you hadn't really thought about yourself, but it causes you to think about it, and you realize, yeah, there is a connection with that I didn't realize.
Right. So self-awareness is an ongoing process.
Yeah, absolutely.
John, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today and talk about this. I think it's an incredible subject. I think it's a subject that we don't spend enough time thinking about. We so often, the very things that are our rudder in the water and keep our lives going in the right direction are things that are sort of sitting in the background, not necessarily at the very forefront. And so I just really want to encourage all of you, keep your values in mind when you're making the big decisions.